I guess you all have to agree if you want.
All right.
Okay.
So I've got this organized as just kind of past, present, and future of Friends of Penn Wynne Park. The past is pretty short. We just got started this spring. So what we've done so far is some knotweed control. I'm going to have a lot of pictures of plants that aren't there, but believe it or not, that's an improvement. So this is along the creek. We've got about 700 feet of Indian Creek that goes through the park. We had a work day to start cutting, and then Dan Mercer, who's on, finished up a lot of this work. We're following the Penn State protocol for knotweed control, which is basically a midsummer cut followed by a fall spray. So the idea is you cut it down so it's not 12 feet tall and completely unmanageable. And then it comes back because all the energy is in the roots. And then late in the fall, when it's trying to send all the food and nutrients back to those roots, that's when you hit it with the poison, and hopefully that starts to kill it. We plan on doing the same thing again next year. It's a pretty tough weed, so this is the start of our efforts, but certainly not the end. We've also done some ivy removal. That was our very first work day, was focusing on the ivy that's climbing up the trees and starting to choke them out. So that was kind of a priority to save the very large old plants that we can. And there's still a lot of ivy in the park. We've got plenty of mechanical removal of that to last us the next 20 years or so. We've talked to the township a lot about the swale that's going in on the south end of the park. I'd say the major accomplishments are that Donna Heller, the parks director, was able to get the location moved outside of the tree line, so that we're going to save a lot more of the existing trees along that south border. And we changed the plant list so that there are fewer non-natives. They wanted to put in 200 Chinese astilbe, for example. They're no longer doing that. And we got a little bit more diversity in terms of the trees they're planting. It's maybe still not perfect, but baby steps in the right direction. And we've done a little bit of tree planting of our own. It's a little hard to see in this one, but over on the right end of that picture is a yellow buckeye that was donated to us by Orshi from the Shade Tree Commission. We have 6 trees from the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society that we're going to put in as their tree tenders, or as part of their tree tenders program this fall. I'm organizing that with Joe McNeil from the Ardmore Tree Tenders. We don't have the species quite picked out yet, but we're thinking a couple of oaks, a couple of lindens, and those are going to go along the stream to kind of start expanding the riparian buffer, providing shade and soil stabilization and all that good stuff for the stream itself. And those are going to be, PHS does bare root trees, so they're a little easier to plant when they're kind of bigger. They're going to be about 10 to 15 feet tall, and maybe an inch or two around. And then we also have some trees coming from Pennsylvania 10 million trees. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And we also convinced Donna to order a new park sign to replace the one that's kind of cracked and faded. So that's being made for us now by the good inmates of the state of Pennsylvania. And I think it's going to be ready sometime this winter. No word yet on whether it will come with a replacement porta potty, but fingers crossed. And so upcoming projects, this is a map that I borrowed from Pinoni's plans. So many thanks to them. Let's see, we have a chat. Can you zoom in a bit on the photos? Oh, I have no idea. I apologize. I'm not the best at the PowerPoint, but can everybody see the map at least? Okay, I'll just keep going.
You haven't forwarded on my screen. You need to hit the presentation button. Try that. It's directly to the left of the slider bar on the bottom right of the screen, where it says 76%. See, there's something that looks like a pull down projector screen. Can you hit that?
Show screen. So are you guys seeing the map or are you seeing the original slide?
I'm seeing the original slide.
Yeah, same here.
If I can just,
There you go.
Now you move.
all right, so I'm just gonna switch manually. Oh, wait, I bet I know what's happening. It's not going into the presentation view at all. So what if we zoom to not 196%? Is that somewhat legible?
Yeah,
But a lot of it's cut off now. I think we were better off when it was a little smaller.
Okay.
I can see Buttercup Field. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's basically just a map of the park, and I've got different areas highlighted. If it was working the way I made it, they would pop up one at a time and it'd be really cool. But I'll just kind of talk through it. So starting at the top, the park entrance, we've got that new sign and that red strip along Manoa. I talked to Donna yesterday. Township's going to provide some street trees to replace the ones that have slowly died out along that area. So we just need to put together a planting proposal for that. And I think we can get those put in this year. Over and then on the bottom, the swale, the township's in work on that. Once they finish, I think we're going to supplement with a few of our own plantings and help out with maintenance, things like making sure there's a trail so that people don't walk right through it, and continuing the invasive control along the bottom border of the park. Over in Buttercup Field, we've still got ivy to work on, but that's eventually it'd be great if we could have a little bit less grass in there, but it's kind of not our focus yet. The creek side, we're going to be working on the riparian border. So I mentioned the kind of schedule of spraying this fall and then another cut and spray next year, which sets us up for a big planting in the fall of 2023. I think as our winters get milder and our summers get harsher, it's going to make a lot of sense to do our primary planting in the late fall. And then over in the East Woods, which is what we're calling the area kind of on the other side of the tennis courts, we have 150 seedlings coming this year from the PA 10 Million Trees project. So I think we will be able to share some of those with Wynwood Valley Park. It's going to be a lot of them, but we're going to continue with tree planting in there and eventually working on a trail so it's a little bit more accessible. But basically replanting that woods that's been decimated by emerald ash borer and ivy pressure. This slide's just about the stuff that we're getting from the tree project. So a couple of shrubs, American Hazelnut, that's top left, and buttonbush. Those are, I think, going to do, the buttonbush especially does really well in wetter conditions. So I envision some of those going into the swale and some along the creek side. A couple of different kinds of oaks, pin oaks and scarlet oaks, hop hornbeam, which is a small tree. The very far right picture is they get these neat little seed heads that look kind of like hops, which I think where it gets the name. And then tulip poplars, the top right picture is sort of the size of tree that are going in. So they're very small, but I figure if we plant a lot of them now, it's less work than planting an equivalent number of 5-year-old trees 5 years from now. So that's kind of the plan. And they also come with tubes and stakes because if we don't protect them from deer, we won't have any oak trees that survive. So the schedule for that is I'm going to pick them up in Lancaster mid-October. And then I was planning on a planting weekend, October 22nd. So just kind of working on the logistics of that. Donna said that Parks will be able to kind of clear the brush out of that area for us, but their brush hog is currently being fixed. So they're hopefully going to be able to get it done in time for us to do that planting. Whoops. So how can you help if you want to get involved in the park this fall? If anybody really loves driving to Lancaster and wants to help with the logistics of picking up a bunch of seedlings, that'd be awesome. I've got my email at the bottom. And then we're going to probably have 2 planting days, one for the many seedlings, which is October 22nd. And then November 18th is the typical day for tree tenders to do like public spaces tree plantings. That's a Friday. And then the major planting for Ardmore tree tenders is going to be Saturday the 19th. That's the weekend before Thanksgiving. I think they schedule it that way because they figure people are home in anticipation of, then traveling for Thanksgiving or having family events. I think Dan Mercer's on, but he's been working on setting up some weekday morning work days. But I'm not sure dates have been finalized about that. Next summer, we're going to need some help with watering. If you lived through the last couple of months, I'm sure you don't need to be told that that's the main challenge, I think, right now in keeping trees and new plants alive. And also a lot of weed control around those seedlings that we put in, just because the Eastwoods has so much ivy that it's going to try to choke them out. We're going to have to stay on top of pulling it back from them. In June, we'll do our second knotweed cut. That'll be kind of a major project. And then fall of next year, we're targeting for a big stream bank planting so that we can start restoring that area sort of in earnest. And that's sort of the next 12 months or so of Penn Wynne Park as I envision it. So if anybody has any questions, I can take myself off of screen share and answer. Sharon? Oh, I cannot hear you.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, unfortunately. There is a little chat icon at the bottom. If you want to type something, I can try to answer them.
Yeah, I still can't hear you.
This is Ben. Can you hear me?
Ben, I can hear you.
Okay, I have a question for you. Those that know me probably know I love trees, but I also like them to be placed where they're most the bestest. It allows for recreation too. If you imagine the tennis courts and the new paddle pickleball stuff, there are kids that sometimes like to sled down that area. It's probably one of the safer areas to sled in the park in a sense, because there's not too many trees. In other words, it's probably, if you're on Remington looking downwards into the valley, either to the right of the pickleball courts. So you have probably where the trucks went down to do some of this major work. Or if you imagine on the left of the tennis court where, to the right of the path there, those two places are relatively safe for sledding. Is it possible one of those places can be left relatively clear of plantings for that sort of thing in the winter?
When you said down into the valley, are you thinking, you're not thinking about Wynwood Valley Park, are you?
No, I think I can answer. Ben.
Okay.
I know what he's talking about.
I think I do mean Wynwood Valley Park. Yes.
This is the one.
Oh, this is Penn Wynne Park we're talking about.
This is
now.
the one on Manoa Street, Manoa Road.
Oh, I apologize that I'm wrong. I
That's
take
fine.
that back.
When
There
you
is a
said
sledding
Remington,
area there
I
too.
started to wonder. Yeah. So we have been thinking about the sledding area that kind of comes down from Manoa to sort of the backside of the baseball diamond. And we're definitely planning to leave that clear. That's sort of a major concern or a focus when we're thinking about placing the street trees along Manoa and making sure that especially at the higher and more fun parts of the sledding hill, get them closer to the sidewalk so that they're not blocking people from being able to go down. And then get into kind of the flatter sections that are to the east of the kiddie soccer field. I think that's when we have an opportunity to start expanding and kind of curving over towards the riparian buffer. Just because then as those grow up, we'll be able to provide shade to like parents who are trying to watch their kids do happy feet without really interfering with sledding. I think there'll still be room for that.
There's also sledding going on when there is snow, which we didn't have for some time, from the playground area towards the flat area. So that's for the more adventurous kids, but there is sledding going on that bank as well.
Okay.
Thank you. You got the right. I was wrong about the park, but the gist of it you explained very well. So thank you very much.
Okay, cool.
Can I ask a question about the poison that you mentioned you're going to?
Yes.
What
Why don't
type of poison it is, and most importantly, what is the hazards of putting it when we think about especially all sorts of bugs, toads, stuff of that nature.
So I am definitely not the world's biggest fan of the Monsanto Corporation, but I think the knotweed is an instance where mechanical control alone, we would basically have to get a backhoe in and excavate the top
The rhizome?
You'd have to get the rhizomes out and it would essentially have to go to a landfill.
Mm-hmm.
So following the Penn State recommended protocols that they have, it is a solution of glyphosate, which is the stuff that's in Roundup. And they formulate it so that it has different surfactants for use near water. It's not something that would be necessarily a first choice, but with the dense knotweed sort of infestation that we have, I think it's sort of the only choice. And we do have Dave from Parks is certified. You've got to have all the certifications to use everything and use the appropriate formulations. So it's supposed to be fairly quickly removed from the area. It's just anything where it hits the leaves, which is why we do it in the fall, so that those leaves are transporting things directly to the roots. I don't know if that completely answers the question, but
it does in some ways, but I would personally not allow any of that in my backyard. But the reason I want to allow it is because it will kill everything except for what you wanted it to kill.
Right. So one of the major concerns is overspray or drift. So we've got
no, not over or anything. You apply. Let's say that you apply it in the best way and the way it's supposed to be, and it will still kill everything else, but will not do anything serious to the rhizomes. So it's a thing to consider, because I think that the mechanical and persistence year over year is actually going to do the majority of the work, and this is going to do just external harm. So
Penn State Extension came up with this plan and practiced it, and it works. That's why we're following their protocol, because it's
I
Penn
don't
State
trust Penn
Extension,
State
not just the
to do that. I'm sorry, but they didn't do a study where they took a park and did just the mechanical work and did another park with just the poison, and another park with both of them, and another park with anything. They didn't do that. I'm pretty sure they didn't do that, because that would take 7 years. And it is in no one's interest to do that except for crazy people like me.
The mechanical approach is a 12-year process.
Mhm.
Okay, the first year you cut it back 12 times. The second year you cut it back 11 times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay, a 12-year process to remove knotweed along there is just completely untenable from a volunteer standpoint. You cannot sustain that level of effort.
I believe you.
And have volunteers do that. and it would be extremely costly for the township to do this. You would basically have to hire a full-time employee to go in there all the time.
As soon as I win the lottery, I will provide.
All right.
employees.
Hey, can I finish, please?
Yes.
Can I finish, please? Haverford Township is in the 3rd year of doing this along Cobb's Creek near Caracong, and it is extremely successful. It doesn't kill everything else, okay? We went in there near Beechwood Park last July. We cut it all back. The township applied herbicide last September or November or October. We came back last June, 2 months ago, 95% of the knotweed was gone, okay? We spent about 15 minutes cutting down the rest of the knotweed over a 2-acre area, okay? And then it's going to be sprayed or again, and then it will be planted this fall, okay? This is an extremely effective whatever, okay?
I'm not
you do not
arguing.
have any experience, look, you don't have any experience with this, okay? I've been doing this for years, okay? If you're saying this doesn't kill knotweed, you are incorrect. I have seen it in my own eyes,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, I said
right.
I'm not arguing.
Okay.
One of the
All right,
things
well-
I figured I'd jump in and clarify is areas where the knotweed has grown, it outcompetes everything else. So it's not like you're, killing knotweed that's sitting next to aster that's sitting next to goldenrod. The knotweed has killed everything.
I see.
So, you're just treating that area that's only knotweed.
Okay.
One of the things that we've definitely seen at Penn Wynne Park itself is the knotweed does need a certain amount of sunlight to really take over. So the areas that have more canopy cover have a lot less knotweed already, just untreated. So, the plan isn't to, follow this removal procedure and then have to do it again 2 years from now. The plan is to get larger trees in, and trees in tubes that are gonna, we can protect them from next year's spray. And then as we get the knotweed significantly, knocked back or eradicated, we're not naive. We realize it came into the area once, it can come back. But as we get more trees in, we'll be able to shade out the area and give sort of the natural plants a fighting chance. It's a kind of thing that the very long-term control involves establishing a healthy ecosystem. But right now, we've just got a monoculture of knotweed, and we sort of need to do something a little bit more targeted to get it under control. And based on all the available evidence and the studies that Penn State has done, this is the best way to do it.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Thank you, Nick, for the presentation, for all the work you're doing in the park. I'm wondering about the poison ivy. I know poison ivy is native. I know there's a lot of it in Wynwood Valley Park. I know I've seen it in Penn Wynne Park, although I don't spend as much time there. How do you approach protecting volunteers from getting it, I guess, and how are we controlling it to keep it off the pathways, obviously, so our kids and I guess the Penn Wynne Park dogs are there too, but if it's illegal, they got a life now, brushing up against all the poison ivy. Sorry, Haverford has a fire engine.
So I've got to say, I was able to hear you, but the sound quality wasn't great. So I got the first
There
part.
was a motorcycle that went by the window. I apologize.
So I definitely got the first part of the question about a lot of poison ivy. Yeah, you're right. It's native. It's not harmful to the environment, but it's also not necessarily desirable. And there is a whole bunch of it, especially over in the East Woods. I think, well, other people might have different opinions, but the way I would go after controlling it is mostly controlling where people walk. If we set down pathways that are wood chips or gravel or, whatever we end up with, and people are walking on those, they're not going to be getting poison ivy. As far as volunteers, we'll definitely warn people. And it's mostly just, long pants and make sure you take a very soapy shower as soon as you finish. But, I think you mentioned dogs. I've got a dog as well who loves to wander off into anywhere that has poison ivy. And I don't know what to say other than that's kind of an occupational hazard of having your dog off leash. But hopefully we can, between the swale and the creek itself and the poison ivy areas, I think one of the general guiding principles is going to be, where can we put trails that people can, sort of interact with the natural areas by observing them rather than either stomping on them or getting urushiol all over their skin. So I think that would be my strategy.
Well, even if they're staying on the trail, how do you keep the poison ivy from creeping onto it? I've just been doing a lot, like I've been walking on Caracon Trail lately, and the poison ivy is basically on the trail.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if there was any plan or something the township does, like if there's any plan for controlling it.
That's one where, I'm not sure there's too much you can do other than, having volunteers with good gloves go out and pull it. So.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have any questions for Nick? I know that herbicide is always the biggest, most controversial question, and as one of the friends of Penn Wynne Park, it's definitely not something that we decided lightly. There was vigorous discussion. There's always vigorous discussion among all the friends of parks groups because it is so controversial. So, if we had 100 volunteers for each park, and fantastic equipment and all of these things, to do it, as Dan said, 12 times a year and then 11 times a year, we might.
I understand that it's impractical. So as soon as I win the lottery, I'll pay for it, but I didn't win it yet.
So yeah, but
We're rooting for you.
I just wanted to reiterate that this wasn't, that
Sure.
it wasn't something that we were just like, oh, and that was great. We really did have intense
It looks
conversation.
like Alan had a question.
Yeah, just following up, and you're right, this was also on my mind. Is there such a thing as like a neutralizing agent that can be, applied? I don't know, this is a totally naive question. I think, Ozzy, you had more knowledge than I in asking your question, but, like after the damage has been done to the knotweed, is there any way to neutralize any of the poisons and toxins and stuff?
Well, so the way glyphosate works is it's a foliar uptake. So it's anything that gets sprayed on the leaves is going to absorb it into the plants. So it doesn't persist in the soil. It's not the kind of thing where we're going to spray it and it's going to sit in the ground for years or do anything to the tree roots or anything of that nature. It basically is just going to impact the plants where it comes into contact with their leaves, which is why the timing is so important. If it was just a generalized toxin, we could just spread it on the ground any old time. But because it works in a very specific way, that's why the summer cut and then the fall planting spraying is important for the timing, because it really only impacts the plants within kind of a narrow window that they're transporting nutrients back to the rhizomes.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, well, I know Nick has, for one thing, Nick has a new baby. So, family things, not like us who have grown kids. So
Yeah.
thank you, Nick. We'll let you hop off if you'd like to, or of course you can stick around and hear the
I
rest.
think I'm gonna hop off.
Yeah.
I think baby is still awake actually, so I'm gonna go help. But if anybody has any other questions and wants to either manage to write down my email or wants to contact me through Angela, feel free and I'll try to answer as best I can.
Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Angela, did I see correctly that we have a section on our website that is dedicated to the efforts in this area?
We have to update Friends of Penn Wynne Park. That's one of my goals for later this month we did have a section and then, the group faded. So yeah, getting that one back up and updating Friends of Wynwood Valley Park. Parks and Gardens has really, come back. So getting those more featured is one of my goals. And of course, I'm always looking for a website help. So if you have come by an enterprising young child who wants to do website-y things, send them my way. Yeah. So I think we may as well stop recording, right? Does anybody feel like we need to record the rest of the meeting? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.